Nope, that's not Photoshop, and it's definitely not AI. That's custom firmware running on my BambuLab X1 Carbon. That's right, custom firmware on the BambuLab X1 Carbon. I didn't expect it to actually be coming out this soon. It's being released in a couple days, hopefully. And this is not the kind of video I expected to be filming on Christmas Day. But it exists. It's real. And I'm running it on my machine. So let's go take a look at it. So first off, I just want to preface this. This is an early revision of it. This is the pre-release version. As it is right now, big things you're getting is extra utilities. So we have some bed tramming tools, some bed leveling tools that we now have access to. You can now actually see what your input shaper values are and the input shaper chart on this printer. You know, it actually runs the input shaper up to 200 Hertz. And there's also LiDAR calibration. We get some extra printer statistics and whatnot. But again, it's early days. And also, for those that don't know, the X1 series of printers with their fancy touchscreen and whatnot, they actually do run Linux. This is running a version of Linux, and with the X1 Plus custom firmware, you can now SSH into your printer and get access at the terminal line. So that's going to open up a lot of opportunities now. So the biggest reason to install the X1 Plus custom firmware right now is simply so that your printer is now jailbroken. So for those that don't know what jailbreaking is, I'm not a software guy, so I'm just basically going to say it's going to allow you to keep installing custom firmware as they come out. So I do want to actually put a PSA out right now, a public service announcement, and this is also the reason why I'm filming this video on Christmas Day, is that if you have a BambuLab X1 series of printer, I currently believe we're good on the X1 and the X1 Carbon. I don't know about the X1E, but with the current revision of the firmware, if you are updated to 1.7.1, which was the update they pushed out relatively recently, that actually breaks compatibility with installing the custom firmware. If you're running 1.7.1, you will not be able to install the X1 Plus custom firmware on your printer. So what you're going to have to do is, if you're not running that firmware, don't update. Simple as that. And if you want to be extra secure, put your printer in LAN mode. If you are running 1.7.1 or any revision, there might be an update out tomorrow for all I know, any revision after 1.7.0, you can use the BambuStudio Handy app on your phone and actually revert the printer. So revert it to 1.7.0 or anything earlier, like 1.6.5 if you want, and you'll be able to install the custom firmware. And by the way, if you're wondering how easy it is to flash this machine to custom firmware, it's easier than modding a Nintendo 3DS. It's that simple. So why go through this whole process to install custom firmware on your BambuLab machine? For one, the first reason, again, it's now jailbroken. So you're going to be able to install custom firmware as it comes out in the future. The machine is now jailbroken. And while features are a little bit limited right now, mostly just utilities, for example, just to give you an idea of what the X1 Plus team is working on, this machine has a USB port in it. There's on one of the controller boards, there's a USB port. They make USB to Ethernet adapters. They're working on getting those online, so you'll be able to run this machine on Ethernet, and you'll not have to use Wi-Fi anymore. They're also working on the ability to fully update the firmware using the SD card, because right now it installs to an SD card. So hopefully in the future, you'll be able to run these machines in fully LAN mode and be able to update them. So for those that are running these machines in the locations where you don't have Wi-Fi, or for whatever reason you just can't connect it to the cloud, or you're like me and you just prefer not to have your machines online, especially machines with webcams due to potential security issues and whatnot, you should be able to hopefully in the future be able to keep these machines fully up to date without having to connect them to the cloud. Other things like getting access to the webcam feed, being able maybe to change your camera, full LiDAR analysis of the pressure advance, being able to use the not LiDAR for other things. Who knows? It's custom firmware. Once it's open, you're going to have a lot of eyes looking on this. And that's kind of one of the reasons to do this and why I love projects like that. So for anyone who's been involved with 3D printing for a while, like I have, you know the big three firmwares. You have Clipper, you have RepRap firmware, and you have Marlin. And those are all open source firmware. So even though you have usually a core team working on those firmwares, anyone can kind of poke their head in there and take a look, modify things. You know, I don't know anything about software besides copy and pasting and whatever chat tells me to do whenever I'm running into an issue. But for those that know what they're doing, they're going to now be able to poke around inside this machine, and soon when there's more eyes looking on this machine, they're going to be able to take this machine, which, let's be honest, is a pretty dang good printer, and they're going to be able to make it better. What's wrong with that? Pretty much almost the sky's the limit. It just, who has the skills to do what to make this machine do what you want it to do. It's your printer, and if you want it to do certain things, you might be able to do that in the future now. So the one thing the X1 Plus team is trying to get across is they're trying to make an alternative firmware. So think of it kind of like Orca Slicer. So for those that are familiar, BambuLab have bambustudio, which is their in-house slicer. It's based upon Prusa Slicer. But then you also have Orca Slicer, which is an open source fork of bambustudio. And there's other people working on that. So while you still have the mainline release that's designed for the system, you also have a forked version of it that has a few more eyes working on it. That might be working on some more experimental things. But it's an option for those that want to play around with it. And soon, thanks to the X1 Plus team, you'll be able to do that with your BambuLab printer itself. So for those that just want to run it on the stock firmware and keep chooching along like you're doing right now, you can keep doing that. But for those that want to tinker, want to play around, want to dive in, maybe unlock a few more features, or you have an idea on your head and you think this machine might be able to do it, you'll have that ability soon, hopefully. So yeah, this again is mostly an announcement that this is coming. The version of the firmware I'm running right now and I've been printing with for the past couple days is based on the V1.5 release. The actual full release version, as far as I'm aware, will be based on the V1.7 release, which that release is kind of nice because it quiets down the motors quite a bit on this machine. So that is going to be hopefully coming in the next couple days. But this video is just kind of to get the word out that this is coming, and also to notify those that want to play around with this about the firmware compatibility. So again, as I said earlier in the video, if you're running the 1.7.1 firmware or newer, you're going to have to downgrade using the handy app to 1.7.00 or earlier. So like 1.65 if you want to be safe, although your printer will be loud again if you do that. So just keep that in mind. Again, it's experimental firmware. There's no warranties. I don't know if it voids your warranty with this machine. I don't know. But yeah, it's more info coming soon. I'm just the messenger. I'm not actively involved in the development of this software. They wouldn't even let me near, a notepad if I was in the room with the guys working on this, put it that way. So I'm if you have technical questions about the custom firmware, I am not the guy to ask, but I may be able to put you in touch. So if you do have serious questions about the custom firmware, if you want to talk with the team, let me know. I may be able to reach out to them and get you in touch. So yeah, a little bit of a late Christmas gift, and one that kind of surprised me too. But again, like I said at the start of the video, custom firmware is now here for the BambuLab X1 series of printers. And again, it's only the X1, not the P1 series, unfortunately. So yeah, enjoy the video. If you want to know more, make sure you like that smash button, subscribe, and hopefully I'll have a full video on this in the future. Cheers.